Hello everybody, welcome to today's video. I hope you enjoy, so let's get started. It's time to see the wonderful components come out of this unique fixture so that they can donate themselves to restoring these older shop lights. So I'm going to go ahead and go through, and we're literally going to keep everything except the housing. So these two lamp Jefferson ballasts wire up a very interesting way, at least to me, compared to some others I've dealt with, which hasn't been very many. I've dealt with more single lamp preheat ballasts than dual lamp ones. But it's interesting to me that lamp 1 here is traditional in the fact that the starter goes across both ends. Lamp number 2, the starter is down here, which looks to be, if we follow the trace here, a different wire from the ballast. It's a red-white wire that goes to the starter, and then it comes out the other end, finds its way back down to a red and black. So it's interesting. It doesn't go across it. It comes through the ballast. Different. So what I'm going to do is literally leave all the sockets on the wires for now, because that'll just tell me where everything is. And as I move it on over to the new sockets, all we need to do is just one at a time, transfer it over, and we'll be good to go. One end is done. Moving on to the next. Now we just need to get these behemoth awesome ballasts out of here. We're going to start with this Miller fixture here. So of course we just need to get it down. It'll be the last time it's LED, which is totally fine. Preheat's going to be much cooler. And here's the inside of our Miller unit. As you can see, we got a nice clean big channel here. And in fact, we still have the electronic ballast that this thing was given after it was, I'm sure, preheat for a very long time. Too bad it's all gone, but we have a solution. So we're going to get this thing out of here, figure out how we want to mount one of these and one of those, and we'll progress from there. So the first problem I run into while converting this back to preheat is that when these were converted, the backwards starter sockets here appear to have just been broken off of their old, sockets and bypassed with some, newer sockets put on. They also look as equally as old, but the point is that we need these connections down below to reach up to these connections up top. So thankfully we have something similar here, and I have the screw that comes out of that. Now I'm not going to use a screw from this. I'm going to use this to go to the store and find the exact same ones, hopefully in brass, just like this, and then we will be back in business. And of course we got to come all the way to the specialty hardware at McClendon's to find our exact screw. Now we have the hardware we need to secure our starter sockets here to the bottom of our main socket. In fact, these go backwards, so that's how they will be. Super happy to find the exact same thing. Okay, so we left off yesterday taking a look at these screws here, and I have since used them. So the fixture is pretty much wired up now. As you can see, we have our big Jefferson ballast here in the middle. This part of the label was flaking off. It was not glued on anymore. So I lightly picked it up and set it down over here. I'm going to put it in something to keep it safe. But that is the label underneath. I don't know if you can kind of see it, but there is still printing underneath there. So that's our big 2-lamp ballast. Moving on down, we'll find our single lamp ballast. Now, as you know, this one has a unique configuration, even though it's preheat. It has some extra wires here because it has an internal starter. And we'll just cover up the yellow and red, and we're good to go. So, of course, we have our traditional blue coming out. And then there's a white here, which is a neutral, which I believe just goes to this, but I hooked it up anyway. Maybe there's some thermal thing in there to turn it off if something goes wrong. I don't know. So we're just going to hook it up the way it shows. And I've already tested this ballast. It is fixed. Now, you might notice something about it being fixed. What is this? Well, I don't remember if we showed in previous clips. If so, I apologize. But the wire that was coming out of here is this red wire here. Now the problem with this is whatever they dipped this thing in, every time you bend it, it breaks open and there's the wire. So it is not bendable. You bend this and it's done. So I cut it off. I got rid of it because it was open right here where it enters the ballast. So I ended up needing to go back to the hardware store again And I ended up picking up not only some shrink tubing because I didn't have any, but also some wire. The problem that I have with the wire, now we're going to go on a tangent on that, is as you see there's a whole bunch of new white wires going through here because you got to have wires going across to either sides of the lamp or extend wires that, well, really didn't reach. The problem with this ballast, and that one too I'm sure, is that the starter sockets, it seems to be they planned out to have one on either end of the fixture. Well, here we have them all on one end, so some of the wires, it has to curve around and go the other way, which is fine, it just has to be extended. The other thing is, as I mentioned, you have to have wires that go all the way across for the starters now, because the starters aren't in the middle, so we have to have a wire come across here. The problem is, I have scrap wire right here, but it's all little chunks and pieces, and it's not all rated the same, and I didn't really like that. I wanted something that was correct for the fixture, or at least as correct as I can get it. So I did some research online. I thought, well, if I'm going to have to get some shrink tubing and stuff like that to fix this, I might as well look for the right wire online. Doing some research, looking for wiring that is the same as on like this ballast here. It's 18 gauge, it's 600 volt. It doesn't say much else on it that I can decipher for my not knowing much about wire, but it has some standard stuff, temperature and all that. And I do have wire like this one here that is rated the exact same specifications, but there's different types of wire, obviously. They're coated in different things, they're made of either rubber or vinyl or whatever. And the problem is when you look up wire online, if you look up, 6 or 18 gauge, 600 volt, all that kind of stuff, you're going to get wire, primary wire, that they use on trailers and boats and cars and low voltage anything. I don't want that, and that's all they show online when you look up that kind of stuff. So, looking a little further into the specifications of these things, I ended up finding that the apparent right stuff, now could be wrong again, but is this. It is I believe a TFFN wire. It says it right there in the middle of the screen. And it's 18 gauge, 600 volt, all that good stuff, just what I'm looking for. But apparently, TFFN wire is fixture wire. This is a fixture. So, we got 18 gauge, which is the same coming out of these ballasts here. And I feel much better putting in wire that's made for fixtures, made for a higher heat, because it's I believe it's like a vinyl inside and then a clear coating on the outside. I'm sure somebody in the comments can let us know a little bit better on that. But that was so cheap. I got like 50 feet of it for $19, which is perfect because I needed it for the fixture and I really wanted to continue working on it. I didn't want to wait to order some reel of 1,000 feet online for some ridiculous price. I was super happy to find that the local hardware store had this in multiple different colors too. I just went with white because I can read it and I already know where all the wires go, so it's whatever. So that's my ramblings on the wire. Let's take a look at our sockets here. These are all put back together and wired up. I have tested the big ballast last night with the 2 outer bulbs, and it works. No problems, no grounding issues. As you can see here, I removed all the insulation off the wire all the way back into the casing a little bit as well, and then fit the shrink tubing over that and into the hole of the ballast there, and of course shrink wrap it all. The new wire here, same stuff as this. Put it on here, soldered it through itself so it's nice and tight and it's not a cold solder joint or whatever. And then of course slide it over, and this works. It's perfect. It's not grounding out on anything. So much safer. The weird thing is that all these other wires, they bend perfectly fine. It's almost like the colors they put into these wasn't necessarily a dye, but the fabric itself was already colored. I don't know. Whatever they used for the red dye on this was a terrible idea. The interesting thing is that this ballast does not have that red wire. It has a white and red coming out of that same port. So maybe they knew that this wire was terrible, or they just didn't have enough that day, so they had a different reel of something different. I don't know. Either way, we're moving right along here. So there's our wiring coming all the way down. to our other end. So where I'm currently at is I need to wire up the single lamp ballast here and bring the wires down. Again, it is so handy having this little spool of wire here. It is perfect. I can cut everything just to size. I am so happy with how it's turning out now, rather than using a whole bunch of random pieces of wire. The other thing we're doing is we're removing the single pull chain and installing a three-way pull chain, so you can do the inner, outer, and then both at the same time, because why not? We got two ballasts, we have the ability to do so, let's do it. So I'm going to continue on here wiring it up, and once I get to some demonstration phase, we'll show it off. Okay, we got it wired up. Let's give it a test. We should get the middle bulb first. Yep, there we go. Now the outer. Nice, and then all of them. There we go. Oh, it is so cool seeing this back to T12. Back to its original glory of preheat. That's what it used to be. Where we are now. That is so cool. We got the reflector on, so let's give it another go. Awesome. It's so cool seeing this thing back in preheat. This thing was heavy when it didn't have ballasts in it. Now that it has ballasts in it, like actual ballasts, this thing's incredibly heavy. So this is going to be fun getting it up in its home here. But we'll do it. We'll just get it up on these little hooks first, and then we'll bring it over and finally screw it onto the other side, because we're going to need something substantial to hold this up for sure. I got a big carton of these Phillips bulbs a while back. Let's see how these look. They should be like a bright white or something. Yeah, there we go, bright white. The fixture's back in its home, and we got those Phillips bulbs in it with a daylight here, a GE daylight. They're all modern, so let's see what we get. That's a nice white. It's not like, you know, warm white or something. Okay, let's do two singles here. Now this is a high power factor ballast, so it's going to look a little brighter. Let's turn the middle one on, because the middle one is a normal power factor ballast. But to be honest, these two bulbs look pretty about the same brightness to me. And of course we have our GE daylight one there on the side. Now the reason I put them like this is I wanted to compare the daylight with these bright white ones to see what the light output would be, because usually the daylights seem to be a little bit dimmer, and it does seem a little bit dimmer. But there's our preheat action fluorescent. Maybe the switch is not working too good. There we go. We'll see what colors I put in here, but I'm really happy with this project. Now we end up moving on to this one. For this beautiful fixture to be restored to preheat, we're going to have to take it down, which is a problem because it lights up our workbench area. So, well, it shouldn't be too much of a problem, right? Because we have about a million other lights here on the ceiling. So I'm going to choose the 100 watt mercury vapor here because it will provide a nice light output for working right here. Of course, we do have our very nice light here, but why not have a little bit more to spice things up a bit? So let's go ahead and get a mercury vapor startup here. I'm not really sure where I want to plug this thing in. So here we go. Isn't that beautiful? That'll work for now, working underneath some beautiful mercury vapor deluxe white color here. The inside of this fixture obviously has a lot smaller channel to work with than the Miller one that we were just working on, but of course this is a totally different fixture. This one is a Columbia Electric Manufacturing Company fixture made in Spokane, Washington. That is so cool. That is where I got these fixtures from. So they didn't go very far from home, and now they're here in the Seattle area. So very cool, locally made fixture here. So I think our big ballast will definitely fit in here. It'll just be a little snug, but that's probably what they prepared for. They tried to find a way that used the least amount of metal compared to the Miller one, which is very heavy and very well built. This is also very well built, but they tried to find some ways to save a little bit on some of that. Now, obviously we have our pull chain switch here. It comes out of one of the starter sockets on the reflector. We do have 4 starter sockets here, so I'm thinking I'm going to leave this where it is, or I'll move it, depending on how I want the fixture to sit. And then we'll make another hole, just like the starter sockets have, for the pull chain to come through, because I really do like this idea. And when you use the pull chain, at least the fixture doesn't rock back and forth if you were to have it here on the end. So that's where we're going to start. The other thing that we need to figure out is what size these little screw holes are, because I do have starter sockets that we'll put here, but we need to find the appropriate screws to screw them back into place. I can't believe it, but I actually have a whole bunch of these little Phillips screws that are the perfect size, so I'm real happy about that. I purchased in a bulk order many years ago a whole bunch of these starter sockets because they were super cheap. Now, as you see, the problem here is that these have a metal brace on the back, which obviously does not work with our configuration. But if we take a closer look at these, we'll see that they also have little holes here on either end. Sure, they're modern, but believe it or not, those holes line up. I've taken one of these apart once just to try it out, and even though they're modern sockets, they will work. We just got to get these metal braces off of the back. We're going to need one more thing out of here too. We're going to need another one of these 3-way pull chain switches. We're going to do the exact same thing. Now, this fixture, the way it was hung, the switch was on this end, which is perfect for when I'm doing videos. It's already over here on the correct side. Now, the problem is I want to flip it around because I want to look at this wonderful sticker here. And I'm going to need to put the switch down here now, which isn't that big of a problem, but we're just going to have to drill a new hole for it, and then we can accommodate that, because I really do want to enjoy having that sticker out here. Now, I also want the power cord on that end because I'm going to be feeding this fixture from a different outlet when I put it back up there, so that I don't have to have all the other lights on out here when doing videos. I can have just this one and this one, and that's usually all I need to light up the workbench for videos. So it'll be nice to have it on a separate circuit so I don't have to interfere light-wise with the rest of the room. The Dremel is a very versatile tool, and of course with a little bit of grinding here and then just bending it apart because I don't want to cut all the way through it naturally, we get off our little pieces here. And now we have our socket, which, let's see if I can release it with just one hand here. Now, this is going to stick out the bottom a little bit, but we'll deal with that as we get along there, I suppose. So I ended up drilling some holes in the middle of each of the starter socket placements here, and that's perfect for our little rivet here that is now falling on the floor. So let me grab a different one, and as you can see, it kind of sticks out there. So if you put it in place, it fits there perfectly, and then it doesn't sit up like you'd see right here, you know. Works out great. Okay, so we got the starter socket thing figured out. This hole I need to make a little bit bigger because this is where our pull chain switch is going to go. Thankfully, even though it's a 2-lamp ballast, they do have holes in here that match up perfectly with the ballast. But that, I suppose, shouldn't be too surprising because they did make these fixtures with just 2 outer bulbs, and the middle bulb was just absent. It just didn't exist. So I'm sure they sold this in a 3 and 2 bulb configuration. Therefore, we have a 3 bulb ballast mounting and a 2 bulb mounting. The first ballast is all hooked up. We needed to use a soldering station here to tin the end of some of these wires so they would fit into the sockets here that are made for solid copper core wire. Now, this wire from the ballast, it is tinned, but I couldn't get it to go in there, so we just have this little pigtail going to it. That works, it's fine. But this is our one end, our big main ballast in the middle, and the other end here. So now what we need to do is make a home for our single ballast. I'm thinking of putting it right here. It'll be close to the switch and the end socket here. And the other end socket will just have the neutral and, well, the starter wire comes down here and the neutral's already here, so that works out. Now, I got some holes marked here, and we just need to drill them out and put our ballast in place. It's all wired up. Good thing I bought 50 feet of this wire because there's about 4 feet left. I mean, there are a lot more wires here that need to be implemented for preheat circuits and for placing switches in certain spots. But either way, it's a little bit of a mess, but it's all wired up. So now we just need some starters, some bulbs, and let's give it a try. We got some bulbs and we found some starters. So let's turn on the power strip here. I don't know what way the switch is on, so here we go. Okay, so it looks like we have the middle ballast currently on. So that's our first setting. So let me go ahead and grab the pull chain here. Let's go number 2. Awesome. And finally, all 3 together. Beautiful. Awesome. Okay, now, last but not least, we need to make a hole in the reflector for our pull chain. It's up in its home. Now we just need to put the starters and the bulbs back in it. I had to take the reflector off for a second and make that hole for the pull chain a little bit bigger so that it wouldn't rub at different angles. But let's go ahead and watch a cool down of our mercury vapor here. Well, that wasn't much of a cool down, was it? Well, we got some preheat. Not very blink happy because it's been on the whole time. I don't know how well it's going to work out for videos, but I want to do the same thing I did here. We got 2 of the 3000K on the outside and then a daylight in the middle. And I feel like doing the same type of thing here just to get a little bit of a different spectrum going on. I mean, that's what this thing's doing essentially. So it'll be kind of the same thing. You'll have the warm and the cool tones. And I kind of like the ability to switch between them. So, I mean, if I really wanted to, I could have daylight here and here. And you're just working in some dim daylight, you know. Or you turn it on over to having both, or just warm white. You get a couple different color variations. So we're going to try putting in these bulbs again, since they work so well in the other one. It has come time for enjoyment. So let's see here. Beautiful. We got a daylight in the middle. 2 3000 kelvins on the outside. And our daylight in the middle again. Still lights things up very nicely. Even when we had the LEDs, of course. These might be slightly dimmer than the LEDs, but these seem about the same brightness to me, to be real honest. I do kind of like the mix of color. Of course, it'll give some odd shadows because you have the 2 different colors, but I still kind of like it. I like the options there. Matches our ring light here. Okay, and the Miller fixture. Again, overall, super happy with how this project turned out. Let's enjoy a wonderful preheat. And with that on, let's take a look at our new gear. Now, I don't have the gear that came out of it. I left that at work. But this is the one that I made. Obviously, it's a little bit thicker, but looking at how it works inside of the fan, that doesn't really matter. Only the bottom half of it is going to touch the gear anyway. And the upper half was just thicker so that it had more support on the shaft. And this was way easier to design and produce than if I were to have made a separate area here that's just to hold onto the shaft better. So yeah, this was way easier to make. The hard part for me with this one was designing the half moon shaped hole in the middle. Hopefully that will be the right size. Putting a cylinder into the object and then cutting it at just the right spot, as you can see here, to make that type of shape. We have 24 teeth on this gear. As you can see, they're a little thinner than normal, and I just did that because the teeth on the big, well, round piece should fit within these gaps a little bit better than how I would have been able to design it otherwise. There's not really any good ways to design different teeth in Blender, at least with the built-in add-on. But anyway, I'm happy with this. It has a little bit of grease on it already because I was just playing with it with the original gear because it was about the same teeth size just to see how it would fit. And it seemed to be fine. So let's bring this on over to another wonderful preheat action here. There we go. And we'll take our cover back off, and I really do hope this thing fits. So of course it didn't fit on at first. I had to slightly widen the hole for it to fit less snug, but I also did some measurements of the shaft here just to make sure I got the same measurements for measuring the hole on the original gear. And funny enough, I did have the exact same measurements. It's 0.25 from the flat side to the side here, and 0.31 for you know, just the diameter of the, well, shaft. So I printed it exactly the same. Don't wonder it didn't fit exactly. So we use the Dremel, and we just make it a little bit bigger, and it slid right on. It still has a little bit of force. We do have some play here at the top, so it's not forced against it. And I just fit the bottom piece on just to make sure. And it is right up against where it needs to be with a very slight gap. So making it this tall was a little bit risky because, well, it wouldn't have fit otherwise, but it works. Oh, well, as far as it fitting. So I'm going to get this thing put back together a bit more, and let's see if we can enjoy it again. And before we put it back together, we got to get all these broken teeth out of here. There's certainly a bunch of them. Okay, we got our gear on, and we got the outer casing back on, and everything wired back up. So let's give it a go. You know what? It's still loud, but it's slightly quieter. It has a different tone to it. The other thing you'll notice is that the globe holder here is very crooked, and it's like that on purpose. I learned that the chain does bump on some of the blades ever so slightly. So I'm thinking if I do this, excuse me, we will be able to avoid it bumping into the blades. So we'll have to see. But I'm happy with this. Probably is hard to see, but you can see the new gear in there. And it's going round and round. As it should. That's awesome. Okay, let's take a look at this thing. Let's get the wide angle lens out. Here we go. It's working again. Should be better now. I hope some of the other gears don't start falling apart. The two that we ended up replacing are made out of some really not good plastic. I really do hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more videos like this one. Leave a like down below and a comment. I do enjoy reading all of your comments. Of course, check out the other videos here on the screen. And until next time, thank you very much for watching.